easiest way to lose people is them feeling like it's all on them, because that's when you get the out of call messages, that's when you get the holiday messages, and this is what causes stress, right? Do you want an incentivized, motivated, challenged team up for the fight, or do you want that's disengaged, everyone's leaving, they don't know what their role is?
For every pound spent on supporting an employee's mental health, employers get nearly £4.70 back on their investment into improved productivity.
It's there staring us in the face. Most business owners really would not ignore that kind of return.
Stop being in denial, and you've got to start taking this a bit seriously.
Couldn't agree more. Hello and welcome to the New Look Bupa Small Business Academy, where today we'll be discussing why investing in employee wellbeing now can save your small business later. I'm Holly Tucker, founder of Not on the High Street and Holly & Co, and today I'm joined by former Forbes Under 30 entrepreneur Ben Askins. Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself, your business, your background, and why the conversation is so important for small businesses.
Yes, thanks so much. So my name's Ben. I've been an entrepreneur now for 10 years. My first business was a digital marketing agency that specialized in luxury brands. And essentially what we did was we would do all of their online marketing. And at its peak, we had offices in London and New York. I sold that business a few years ago, and since then I've launched two new businesses. One is a company called Gaia, which is in the green tech space, and the other is in the content space. So I do a lot of content around business, management, working life, and everything like that. And so, yeah, no, enjoying it immensely.
Well, we've got so much to talk about today. Today, we'll be looking into the impact of employee wellbeing on SMEs. Three key concerns: talent, resilience, and productivity, discussing our own experiences and getting expert guidance from a Bupa clinician on what SME owners can do to tackle the issue and put employee wellbeing at the heart of the small business. Ben, we're going to start with talent, and it's such an important area, attracting and retaining top talent. A statistic that might surprise you is employees are more motivated to choose an employer who offer health and wellbeing support, and yet only 11% of the 2.7 million SMEs do so. I'm wondering why so few do.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think the obvious con to running a small to medium-sized company is that you can't compete with the bigger budgets.
Absolutely.
And I think we've all, we're both entrepreneurs, we've both had our own businesses, we've all been in that situation where someone simply comes along and offers a salary that you can't match. And you have to just sort of say, look, that's part of how it works. I think what I'm seeing, and I get a lot of these messages in my socials at the moment, is salary isn't as important as it once was. It's still important, of course it is. It's not something people just don't care about. But in regards to what the absolute priorities are, more and more we're seeing people will happily take slightly less if they enjoy the work, if they enjoy who they're working for, if they feel like they're getting a little bit more out of it from a sort of perhaps fulfillment perspective or whatever it might be. And I think that's the area where small to medium-sized businesses, that's the real opportunity, because the con of having a bigger company is you're locked into those big processes, those big structures. You've got very little freedom in regards to what you can and can't do. You have a lot of freedom as a small business owner, and absolutely that's where I think the opportunity is okay, you can't necessarily pay the salaries that you might want, but actually you can create an environment where people say, look, I really love it here. I actually really do, and you can't really put a price on that. And so for me, the fact that so few are making this a priority when it's such an obvious benefit, I think it's something we definitely need to look at.
SMEs want to attract younger workforces, and I certainly hear this, and yet poor mental health is stopping a significant proportion from entering or remaining in the job market. When we talk about attracting the younger workforce, 987,000 16 to 24-year-olds weren't in work, education or training in between October and December 2024, which I find astounding. That's almost 1 in 7 out of work. And 2/3 of these people are believed to be economically inactive, so they're not looking for work, and 44% citing poor mental health as a significant barrier to employment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear a lot of these types of stats, and I think what I say is, look, by 2030, 30% of the workforce will be Gen Zs. Okay, yes. We have got to get our heads around honestly the language I hear around Gen Zs from sort of founders and business owners. they're not a different species, right? They're human beings like all of us. Look, working life has changed a huge amount, but these are still people. They're still going through the same challenges we all went through in a slightly different way, because that's kind of how human society and human progress works. We need to change the language around this a little bit and start taking ownership of the fact that we have to mentor. This is their first experience of the working life. It's our job. We have a duty of care in a lot of ways to say, right, I'm in charge of these youngsters. I want to give them the best experience, but it's in my benefit to give them the best experience, because the sooner I train them up, the sooner I give them the vision, they can then be a lot more productive to me, because the fact of when you start work, you don't know what you're doing and you need to be trained up, but the sooner you get there, the better.
Ultimately, small businesses risk losing phenomenal leaders of the future, phenomenal talent to big businesses, if they don't prioritise these the new talent coming in, their well-being, their mental health. And 18 to 24-year-olds have actually cited that mental health training, or a supportive line manager even, it's just those small things it takes to turn this narrative around so that we can actually attract really the future of our companies.
Yeah, I mean, people overcomplicate this topic. For me, it's very simple. If it's good for the team, it's good for me. And what I mean by that is, if I can provide an environment or benefits or schemes or whatever it might be, or training or anything like that, that's going to directly improve morale or motivation or engagement or whatever it might be, that is only going to benefit me. And that benefits me in a selfish way, right? That benefits me because if they're more motivated, they're going to be more productive. There's going to be more output, which is only going to benefit me financially. So I always say, this is one of the rare win-win moments.
Yes.
Right? This is really...
There's so many other things stacked against us.
So many different, but this is the one area where you're doing the right thing and it generally works best for you. And so that's why I get a little bit frustrated when I see people just go, oh, it doesn't matter, or just a bit of elbow grease, and you go, look, you're kidding yourself, right? The numbers are too large. We've got a really unengaged workforce. Stop being in denial, and you've got to start taking this a bit seriously.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, let's move on to resilience and the challenges of looking after your existing workforce in order to support them and basically to prevent them from dropping out. And a statistic, according to Mental Health UK's burnout report in 2025, was just over 1 in 5 UK workers, 21%, needed to take time off work last year due to extreme levels of pressure and stress. Have you had experience in this area?
I've had a huge amount of experience there. I think one of the most common reasons why people approach me on social, and for the record, those who don't know, I get a lot of stories in regards to having a bad boss or bad management or a bad experience at a company. One of the leading causes is just stress. I think the advice I always say is you've got to listen. You have to listen. You have to take this bit seriously, because 21% is so high.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, our goal here is we're looking at growth, we're thinking about productivity, we're thinking about the economy, all these things that everyone talks about. Having 21% of the workforce off, that's never going to help all of us. And the numbers are too high for it to just be edge cases of just, for whatever reason, people have sort of cracked. So we have to acknowledge and embrace the problem a little bit. The majority of businesses have 2 to 10 employees, which means anyone who goes on holiday or goes on their honeymoon or which they have to do, right? These are good things, and it's so important that you do and you give those people that time off, but it leaves that void, because if you are 1 of 10, you're 10% of the workforce straight off the bat, which is much harder to absorb, especially in a small business where you're all often doing lots of little jobs. So thinking about the structure and the dependency of where the work is so important, because it's just not fair. The easiest way to lose people is them feeling like that it's all on them and no one else is supporting them and no one else can do what they can, because that's when you get the out of call messages, that's when you get the holiday messages, all these things which every boss knows they shouldn't be doing. Every boss knows no boss thinks, unless you're an absolute muppet, no boss thinks you should be doing that. But it's amazing how many do, because it's an emergency, because they just need a quick thing. And this is what causes stress, right? It's the modern age, it's the WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp plays a criminal part in our messaging, because it's really slipped into the gap of everyone knows you can't message employees on Instagram, for example. And everyone knows you can kind of switch off your Slacks and your Teams, but WhatsApp's just about managed to sort of walk straight down the middle, where bosses feel very comfortable just messing, and they go, oh, it's just a quick thing, but you don't understand what that means, because it puts you back at work. Yes. So when you're trying to have that switch off time, when you're trying to, and I've burnt out, and I'm sure you've had, and that doesn't make me weak. That doesn't make me not resilient. And I struggle with resilience sometimes, because I often think, well, actually, should we not just create an environment where perhaps you shouldn't require resilience as often as people seem to think you should? So there's lots of different things about it for me, but I think for me, it's firstly, you've got to listen to people. And then second, you've got to think about it, like what is causing it? And think about why. But honestly, sorry, I'm starting to rant now, but the thing that bugs more than anything else is bosses who sit there and try and guess why their team are stressed. Ask them. Sit down, create a safe space and say, what can I do to make your life a bit easier? And often it's just having that initial conversation.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, if we're talking about 2 to 10 employees, right, this is a small amount of people, you can actually put them around a table, which I do every single morning. And whether it's virtually or in person, we actually do have a barometer. So as part of my business, Holly & Co., we always say that we're never allowed to, we have to hold each other accountable. We're never allowed the barometer to go to 10. It's 1 to 10. So every single Monday morning, I ask which number you're on and why that is. So someone will say, I'm at a 2, I'm at a 3. We all have a rule that you can't get to 5 without speaking up. You can't just turn up and say I'm at a 5. You'd be saying, well, how come you didn't warn me that you were increasing in your barometer? Certainly a level 8 can come in, but that's normally what I would say is that can be external. That can cause that stress. But I think to your point, this is because we communicate on a constant basis. The team, and I think here again, it's culture and values. If you have a culture and values where absolutely at all points in time, I want to know if things are building. If you feel the hum of stress coming along, it's your responsibility and I will listen to why that is the case. And let's work this out together. Let's get rid of this so that by Friday, maybe we could have alleviated it. If you haven't got a listening culture, if you've got a culture where they don't feel that they can come to you, and it's a very simple thing to have a barometer, by the way, and very simple rules that you can put in place. And actually also holding each other. It's not just the boss. It's your work colleague. You can say to someone, I'm feeling a bit like a 6 right now. You get this language that you can talk about things. And then ultimately, it doesn't become stress, which is very hard to define. It's something's bubbling. It's not working. It's causing me anxiety. I need to talk about it. And it's better to have it out than in. And so I do think that there are very simple things that you can put in place. But I agree, culture and values, that ethos, the soul of your company, the emotional language that you can use around these things really, really helps.
Yeah. And it very rarely, the barometer is a great way because it's unless something huge has happened, often in personal life, it doesn't go from 1 to 8 overnight, right? It's death by 1,000 cuts, so it builds
absolutely.
up. And I think a lot of the stress, when I ask people why they signed off work, it's not that they couldn't necessarily handle it. They just felt there's no end in sight. That's the big thing. It's people are happy to take the hits a little bit more if they know, look, it's going to be a tough week, that we're super busy, etc., but next week we've got this. Or if they feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, you can work through it. But it's when there's a lack of hope, that's what kills a business and a culture, because people just feel like, look, I've already raised it, or I don't feel like I can raise it, or I've spoken up and nothing's happened. And that's where motivation just drops like a stone, because if you don't feel like there's something that's going to be solved, it's really hard. And I get it. I'm very sympathetic for people who don't.
And resilience, let's face it, when you're running a small business and you have a small work team, we all have to be resilient because there's a lot of pressure on every single individual to make the collective work to reach the goals that we've set or the ambitions that the company have set. So we've spoken now about attracting talent and we've tackled keeping talent. Let's now talk about that link between well-being and productivity, because company well-being is proven in the statistics at the bottom line to be a significant predictor of a firm's performance. And I'm wondering what your experience has been here and if you've actually literally seen that link.
Absolutely have. And I think there's a big question which I always say to bosses and entrepreneurs or whoever is in charge. I say, what are you giving them? What am I getting out of? So you're saying you want me to work incredibly hard for you. I'm open to that, but what am I going to get in return? I think that's the big question people often forget.
Ultimately, as a boss, your responsibility is to set out, what are we looking to achieve this year? How are we going to break this down? What is manageable and what is motivating? And looking at that stuff, we've already established it's a small team. at Holly & Co, what I tend to do is look at an individual and I look at what their goals are, and then I look at their energy goals, and we establish how do they need to gain energy in order to do these things as well. Because ultimately, improving performance and productivity is when you really can say, I know that individual. I know what motivates them. I know, and not anyone is the same. So for one person, it could be share options that's going to really work for them. For another person, it could be the health insurance. For somebody else, it could be the flexibility that they've got to work around their childcare. Really thinking of people as individuals and what is going to be their Duracell battery. How are you going to fill that up every single day? And I think that that's something we've got to be really wary of when the statistics saying only 10% of the workforce is engaged.
The 10% thing is really interesting because you can either look as that as the most depressing stat of the day, or you can look at it as a bit of an opportunity and say, look, I just need to motivate my team and I'm a top 10% business. So
as a boss, I take that responsibility because surely every single person deserves their own sort of package that is created in line with what's going to make them the most productive.
I remember one of the most fascinating cultural challenges I had was when I sold my first business and we joined the company that bought us and we had to merge the cultures. And the one thing I remember, this huge discussion we had around perks and benefits, because the new business technically had a more expensive benefits package in the sense they spent more per employee, but our team really didn't like the new one. And the reason was very simple. Our team was a lot younger and the package they were offering was, ours was around sort of travel incentivization around things like that. And theirs was around things like dentists and eye tests and like that. I'm not saying that wasn't a value, but it was just such a sort of different cultural challenge. So really think about your team and who you want to recruit. And that's why it goes back to who you want to hire in the first place, because you're looking for these personalities. Like, just because they're not a good fit for you, they might be an amazing fit for someone else, but it's important to hire on that sort of thing. And then you build out the package around what you think they want.
And when we actually look at Deloitte's analysis on this, and this is actually not a depressing stat, this is the opposite.
Love that.
It shows for every pound spent on supporting an employee's mental health, employers get nearly £4.70, so nearly £5 back on their investment into improved productivity.
And what's amazing about that stat, right? Think how much probably both our businesses spend on Google ads or like a 5-to-1 ROI, we would take that and run. I think how much we pump into that side of it and how little comparatively businesses will spend on that. So it's such a good point, right? But it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Like, do you want an incentivized, motivated, challenged team up for the fight? Or do you want that's disengaged, everyone's leaving, they don't know what their role is, they're feeling like lost? Like, it's just, no one wants that. And when you say it as starkly as that, you do just think kind of, what are we doing? But yeah, it's obviously a growing space for sure.
Thank you, Ben. That was such an interesting conversation. I'm now joined by Dr. Robin Clark, Medical Director for Bupa UK and Global. Robin, we've heard about the challenges that small businesses are facing when it comes to employee well-being. What are the solutions that are available when it comes to tackling these challenges and helping your small business thrive?
Yeah, I really like some of the points that were made earlier. And if we just take a little step back about actually what are the needs of the business and the business owner and the SME in the first instance. So actually, I think the first step is around truly understanding what's the requirement and what's the objective here. So actually, what are the needs of your people? And they're not going to be the same. There is no one size fits all. So actually sit down, understand, do they have a well-being need? Do they have a health need? Delve into the information and the data around why are people taking time off. Is there anything there that you can do to support them while they're off, or even prevent them from going off in the first place? So I think very much getting that baseline correct is a really good place to start from, because that at least allows you to then take a step forward in the right direction rather than somewhat blindly. Bupa, for example, have some really great resources which can help address some of these problems. So we've got the Workplace Health and Wellbeing Hub. So that's a free resource that anyone can go on. So it gives some ideas there around how to set up and address wellbeing issues within your company. And it also has some pointers around things like how to have those conversations, some of those educational pieces, and some materials to help get you underway.
What practical health and wellbeing initiatives can SMEs actually invest in?
Well, one of the other great resources that we've got is Growth Plus. That's available to our SME customers, and there's some excellent content on there. So, for instance, if you're struggling with getting your wellbeing plans up and running, then there's already some templates on there that you can use to really help accelerate that. There's some bite-sized videos. There's training modules for your leadership team and other employees. So some really, really useful content in there to really help with a kind of a holistic plan and get things in place. And one of the other brilliant resources that we've got is through the My Bupa app. So that's our digital portal for healthcare services. But within there, there's, again, lots of wellbeing content. There's things like exercise classes, yoga, meditation, loads of really, really good things that individuals or at company level, they can use to really boost their well-being. So loads of great material to go and have a look at there as well.
Fantastic. And the statistic around for every £1 spent supporting employees' mental health, employers get back £4.70 is such a significant statistic, isn't it? In the positive way that proactivity rather than reactivity is just so much better.
Yeah, and I think that statistic really should be the call to action. So
yes,
again, it really hammers home that point that prevention is better than cure, but investing in health and well-being has a really strong return on investment. So most business owners really would not ignore that kind of return on investment. So again, it's there staring us in the face. So it's something that really we should be grasping and running with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge opportunity for small businesses.
It certainly is. And I think the final bit is how do you bring this to reality? How do you really get the most out of it? And I think the final point is around making sure that you've got that right culture, that right safe space within your organization, and that you start bringing these conversations up so that people get confident both talking about it and dealing with the issues as and when they arise. Because let's face it, there will be people that need health and well-being support within the organization at some point. And it's far better to be on the front foot and be prepared for it rather than being caught on the hop as and when these things arise.
Couldn't agree more. Robin, thank you so much. I hope you're leaving with plenty of ideas and inspiration to take back to your own businesses. Take care, and we'll see you next time.